labde chongang zomche zo dida yume kinsuru muchi udzewe andagi kindu manabare andagana shingita kashure daga düzos pebe ani kenanzu chojo homo denge ani gyuripinda ta ani daga Ameri게 미마친 kenanzu maranzu chojo changolo de zomni ani 제 유충한테 시작하고 중 상물로 대시대 슈비니스
I'd like to begin by making reference to the school, Western Connecticut University, where we're all gathered here today, and to mention specifically Gyema Khenso Losang Gyama Rinpoche and members of the center who invited Ling Rinpoche and all the people who have gathered here in this hall today, persons who are interested in Dharma teaching, and to be able to meet here for this event makes me very happy. I'm pleased to be here, and I wish you all good wishes.
다들이 말한주 동아 군변이 저전에 아니 도시 송 레구나만 신체네. 드네 동아 군변이 그와 저전 그와 동아 군변이 저전에 도시 라와나만 신기 드네 알아주 니만이 링이야. 사펜바다 니만이 친. 다들이 알아주 드네 비게 간델 하게마 돈에 마셔체. 아니 선이는 저 투시신부 아니 제나 표야치 뭐다 이만이 링 어두신 이만이 링 아니 제림 어디들이시스.
So in keeping with the request from the Dongla Chöpen Ling, Dongla Kunpe Ling, right? Sorry about studying. So I've been invited here to teach for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, and in keeping with their request, today on Saturday for the 2 sessions, the teaching will be on the Guru Yoga prayer Gaden like Gyema, and then we'll have a program for tomorrow. In the morning, there will be a permission blessing initiation for Avalokiteshvara.
어제산 데이 인도산에다 그래서 당아란주 조데다 오 아니 다 도단이가 자원이스 와 춘와 춘이 다 되게 추적으로 나란주 재진 근대진에 다 추시에 있는 춘이에 이내를 아니지 그게 벌써 다 지 준비 수위내를 와다 최저 재림 거리지네 아니 나란주데 토단이를 그거 까담베 기회신이 남기 송원한 신 토단이라 자원이 있어 이 개침을 쉬우지 다디 송도 저한테 내 인도산에다 토단이라 자원이 있어야 돼 토마티를 아니 나란주 끊는데 쉬우지 개침을 치 아니 즉 그게 계획 자원이 용수적으로 좀 차니 근데 나란주 되니 뭐와체 개침보 어디들이 저기 이거 인도 아니 다 드린 나란주 우주의 인도산에 있는 나란주 토마 끊는데 뭐 줘야 돼 개침을
So, first main point to be made is that whenever a Dharma activity is being carried out, generally, especially with Dharma teachings or any other Dharma activity, making offerings, whatever virtuous activity that you undertake, it's very important to remember the aphorism from the Kadampa teaching, 7-point teaching, which says that there are two important activities to be done, one for the beginning and one for the end. And so what this means is that when you undertake some meaningful activity, it's crucial, it's important, it's essential to correct your motivation, make sure that you have a proper attitude that's motivating you for the activity, especially a Dharma teaching when you listen to it, or also teaching it, either way. And then at the end, such virtuous activities as the proper an act to carry out is to dedicate that virtue. So these two things are very important when I want to begin by making this point.
어쨌든 이제 전에 딱 말한 그 꾸는데 간대지 고고요 그랬으나 로아 추니 제체가 뒤에 아니지 가서 그래 로아 라니 소소 찍고로 왔다 소소 찍고 세정와 로아 세정고 용야 아니 나자매 봐 어디 되게 로아다 세디 분조 기체도 많이 받지 로아 아니 다는 신기 지게 세 치말이야 아니 하다미 로아다 지 가서 그래 문도 고반지 아니 톱나선배 삼바직 많이 봐 로아 아니 지 다지 로아 말한 수 심지 어디 되게 많이 받지 로아 아니 로아다 배 심지 탐제 아니 배 라나면도 저배 산지 고반도 붙이 고반도 고바치고 또 디인도 아니 지 가서 다 라면에 줘 아니 가서 보고다 간절하게 메토네 아니 냠내지기 삼으러와 안한 주다 기부 진진 총수 시시고와 기부 진진 총수세 미유기도 봐 미유기 가르쳤습니다 세치만 먼저 잡는 기부 중고 세치만 되는 안도 타바토니 그와 타바토니 스콜에 네버 중에 삼바끼니 티니 초중도 삼바주에는 다디 가서 그래 기부진 아니 기부 첨부수도 안한 주다 그와 타바도 산지 그와 심지 탐제 라나면도 저도 산지 고방 고바 저기 이 집도 티니베 딱 간다 이 집도 티니베 초중이 삼바다 티니베게 딱 라면에 좀 냠수랑이 삼바 디디지가 이나 아니 기부 첨부 주 공수도 도와 어떻게 되는 거예요 인도 안한 주도 기부 첨부 주다 두고요 와 세상 디디 이끌어 디디지 생각을 되게 생각했어.
So with regard to your motivation, there are several examples that one can refer to as possible motivations. So the first one is definitely an attitude that we should not have, which is that we should not be mainly concerned about this life. So typically someone wants to have a long life, or to be free of illness, or to have success, wealth in your activities. So this is not even Dharma thought. So definitely you should not have that idea in your mind as the reason or purpose for hearing this teaching and having the intention to put it into practice. Then among various Dharma attitudes that are generally considered Dharma, in the Lamrim system, there's three kinds of practitioners, or three types of persons. And so the lower type of person is the one who is concerned about their future life, want to make sure that they don't have an unfavorable future life, and that they are able to attain what's called a higher status, which means life as a human being or as a samsara god. While that's a virtuous attitude, it's not appropriate for this teaching. Similarly, the middling level of person is someone who recognizes samsara to be unsatisfactory, undesirable in all its forms, and wants to free him or herself from all samsaric suffering, and seeks liberation, nirvana, but only for himself or herself. Then even that, while that's a virtuous attitude, and an ultimate goal, it's not the proper goal for this teaching. So the proper attitude is that of a so-called great person or supreme person, is the person who has the Mahayana attitude. So the Mahayana attitude is someone who not only recognizes the unsatisfactoriness of his or her own suffering, but also equally is concerned about the welfare of others, all sentient beings. And so one is then seeks to develop oneself to that highest level of supreme enlightenment for the purpose, not simply for oneself, but mainly in order to be able to provide all sentient beings with the means of reaching that same goal themselves. That's the proper attitude, Mahayana attitude, for a teaching such as this, which is Guru Yoga practice. And so, as much as possible, you should try to develop in your mind that as being your goal, your main purpose, your hope, is that with that being your goal, that this practice would be promoting that goal, helping you to achieve that goal, and therefore that's the reason for listening to this teaching.
어디지? 다들 나랑주 지단다 나랑주 오 아니 달라면에 조세데 다 지난 계시고 싶으셔도스 그와 아과도 되는 나랑주 베다 비규 남데스네도 한다 상한 냠내싱엘라 아니 베 메드메로와 네버도 아니 다 고야지 그와 되네 비게 별 간증이 좋네야 사기까니 그와 리스마지의 추주 참말로 돈에 아니 배 라면은 줬어야지 시라 개침보 되는 비게 나랑주 냠내 간데 집에 있네 그봐 아니 집에 하이는 저로 간데 집에 냠내 집에 있네 디 가서 왔다 마송 권해야 당부텔라 라면은 줘디 녀버도 나니 고야디다 니마사야 가규 길루 아주 참말로 아니 배 답변을 가지고 좀배
So the practice that is the topic of today's teaching is a form of Guru Yoga practice, and in Tibetan Buddhism, for all forms of Tibetan Buddhist practice, the importance of the guru or spiritual teacher is essential for all practitioners, and doesn't matter which tradition, whether Sakya or Gelu or Nyingma or Kagyu, all the major Tibetan Buddhist traditions equally recognize practicing Guru Yoga as being indispensable and the most important element of one's spiritual development, especially in the context of Tantra practice, which is, in Tibetan Buddhism, considered the most highest and most effective form of spiritual practice for seeking that ultimate goal that was discussed.
어제는다 단단히 나랑주 주에다 정보를 뭐 종합을 치고 그리고 제 종합을 침불을 땜베 안에 라면nen조 어디도시 자기요래 지난 제 종합을 제로 묻히는 땜베 라면nen조 때라 카로 하시지 그리고 안에 지기 시규루기 안에 간대라게 봐 안에 웬세 가서 니규루기 되네 비게 그래서 라면초라 되네 냥 다가는 신기 가서 그랬다 기루와 기루를 지는 기루 지규스 제네 다 카로 숨도 됐어요 도와 카로 숨요래 아니 단단딜은 다 와 디 가서 간델하게 메토네 마 주에 있어.
So particularly in the tradition of the followers of Lama Tsongkhapa, there are several forms of Guru Yoga practice that are taught instructions are given. The one for this teaching is called Segyu. Segyu means a reference to early tantric monastery that was established by Lama Tsongkhapa's disciples. So the Gaden Gyema is associated with that lineage in particular. A second Guru Yoga lineage that's equally important is traces its origin and associated with Wen Saba, Losan Dundrup, in a lineage that proceeds through Kedru Jaya and reaches to the Panchen Lama. Panchen Lama himself composed Lama Choba ritual, which is well known and is another major form of Guru Yoga practice. A third one, which is also widely taught, is associated with a Guru Yoga instruction that from Tsongkhapa through Kedrup Je, one of his principal disciples, and then has its own lineage. So there are several such Guru Yoga practices that are still taught in our lineage, in Gelugpa lineage. But the teaching for today, Gaden Gyema, is associated with the lineage that came through Segyu Monastery. So probably the Segyu, this Gaden Gyema prayer, Guru Yoga prayer, and then also Lama Choba ritual, which is also a form of Guru Yoga practice, are probably the two most well-known, most widely practiced in Gelugpa school. Between the two, Gaden Gyema has several qualities that are its benefits or its main attributes. One is that it's rather short. It's not very long. It's only 10 verses, 12 verses or so, and so it's easy to recite. It's considered to be a complete form of practice, and one whose blessings are very strong. Unlike not to say that Lama Choba is not that way, but the Lama Choba ritual is longer, and so this particular prayer is one that is much more convenient, easy for everyone to practice, and is very widely taught and followed.
Gaden Hajemen, then Joe Manduan Kong, the Handis Borasena, Maranzo Susu de Sekamba Yorwa, Kamba de Alexanga Yapuchi, Roa, Kamba de Stachi, Maranzo, Jendicini, Big Chujukawa said that then Chitunga Matendishu, didn't they should do that? Maranzo Kamba, Lama Chambu, the catching with the tradition, and you Tamashi Sobrova. Didn't she? I mean, enjoy them. Tushita said that she was piggy and the Sambachi Tony, right? Gugu, you were in the Zani, the social to say, but the Zamaya was right. Where did and pay catch for this? Zangaya was right? Zangaya was check. And Jika sort of that Jikua Kenny to Pazamaya was to a Tisan of that, bird of by that, right? And perfume of the Harini teaching it, right? The Zamaya was Susu Susu Nania, Sanje Chansim, that Lama Chimbu Tendishu, Zama Suru, Dinashi, where they catch for this. Dine Susu Desa Delia, Juna, and Dembeko, and Dana Shingi, Jangolo Zonga Chimbo, and it's Guda in it, Buddha in it, what? Tangata, and Asota, the Shamche. And Dana Shingi, Gutanda. The Kukari unit, what the Dembe Kucherum Kukari did Uniani, G. Chubaya Watch, what? That Jabtani, you be met all that the dig pile. 샹제와 아니 대체 아니 되는 소소만 뒤뒤인데 맞대 대두자네 아니지 어디 소라
So, for this particular prayer, any puja activity, for instance, there's some preparations that one should always carry out before beginning to do the actual practice itself. As a preparation. So, the first thing in the ritual is you're inviting the Lama. And the Lama embodies all of the Buddhas of the 10 directions, and then accompanied by countless other great Arya Bodhisattvas. And so you're going to invite them to appear before you and then to worship them. So the first thing to think about is that just as when you have some guest, very important guest, whether it's a lama or some close friends or some important guest that's coming to your house, you wouldn't want to invite them to your house if your house was not clean and messy. And there are many ways of thinking of cleaning as well. It's not simply to get rid of dust and to make the house neat. There are internal thoughts that are also meant to be done as you do that. But the main point is it means that whenever you do spiritual activities, there should be a certain cleanliness and purity, both outwardly and inwardly, when you engage in Dharma activities. And so cleaning the room or your whole house, especially the area where you're going to do the practice, is something that you should do at the outset, at the very beginning. Once you have done that, then typically you might have an altar or some area where you're going to carry out the practice, and so you be appropriate for you to arrange a representation of Buddha Shakyamuni as the master of all the Buddha's teachings, whether a statue or solid image or painting. And the same for Lama Tsongkhapa, since this practice is mainly directed towards his lineage and teaching and blessing. And then once you arrange the altar for such holy beings, you don't want to leave it empty without offerings. So you want to arrange. Tibetans usually traditionally have a row of bowls. Water bowls are one form of offering. Then incense, flowers, fruit, any such suitable object as an offering is appropriate. So these are things that one should remember when you're going to engage in Dharma practice, that these preparations are necessary.
어디지? 나한테 아니 쳐봐. 아주 다지 메도다. 로 메도도 부일로 쏘봐. 그봐 대다 샹그러와. 다는 신기더니 말한서 신도다 단지. 세다 세 중앙다. 지 바가지 사초 점매 받체. 봐. 지 오늘 전에다 세 가리네 부타고. 아니 장마. 아니 지 가리네 공쳐. 봐. 야워. 디디. 마체마도 되니 지 안다다 소수 사이는 안주 상케 조선 너무 다니 야고 누구도 와 근데 신다 산 주주교세도 저 표현되다 야고치 와야 개침 그래.
So with regard to the offerings, it's a form of reverence, it's a form of honoring, it's a form of worshiping, and so when you obtain offerings, when you go about obtaining offerings, as much as as possible, within your means, within the means and resources that you have, you should try to obtain the best quality of offerings, whether they be flowers or whether they be food. You don't want to just put some ordinary object on the food, something that you know, you think of it as in the case of food, for instance, that's something, you know, would you consider eating it yourself? It's something that you would consider, you know, suitable. And so, not only suitable, but when you're making offerings to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, then it's important to try to obtain the highest quality that you can afford and is, you know, within your means, and use that as a form of offerings.
어디지? 아디네 가서 오래 어디 되지기 전에 저거 비에 당 아니지 가서 오래다 가서 오래 다 소소디 데디 저거 비에 근데 디됴데 대기로 와 데디 대베가 주나다 류남남 주 균den세티 어다 되지기 전에 와 아니 기지 장고 상바 다 düğünde doğdu dağında 기지 장고 상바 직제 아니 개베직 두서 기지 장고체에서 직체 아니 미나들 따와 직체 와 아니 가서 제 아니 깨내야 자와 직체 아니 샵도지 기중 와 기중 슈고 니체 되니 dimba 고거데 왜 지금 직체 되니 가래 샵도지 기중 슈고 직체 미나들 따와 직체 제깨내야 자와 직체 미나들 따와 dimba 진수 중세 고거체 아니 디카사디 어디 라바데 돼 있어 그거 어디데 대체 도슈 그거 아디 가래 디데스 유나니 계속 냠네 그거더니 양이 앞에야 그거 좀 개발적이 돼 있어요. 아니 시합도지 기둥 슈가. 나디 중간 시합도지 기둥 슈가도 왜 계시면 있어라. 디 나란주 류드 셈니 때 대화 친구 있는데 류기 대당 토네 셈디 토네야 전식 대부요야 당 안다는 신기 저롱기 파 시야 부상투나 아니 디토네야 지 도바게 당 가리네 개발 친구 요래. 봐. 이 중앙인도 류남난 주든데 중앙 역시체. 근데 뭐 중앙이나 아니 다 가서 그래. 체기 중심도 하면 유디 수단적으로 되지 돈에. 다 기시 되게 이동 대야 공식현은 다 국가관 되네. 먼저보다 얘기 말어.
So when you're getting ready to carry out the practice, it's also important to pay attention to your posture, how you sit. So there's a particular manner of sitting that is associated with Buddha Vairocana, which is said to have 7 elements to it. And this is a phrase that's often used to describe the ideal manner in which to sit. So that involves your legs, if possible, sitting cross-legged. There is, in the West we call it the lotus position, but in Tibetans call it the Vajra cross-legged position. That's considered ideal. Not everyone is comfortable sitting in that position, but if you can, that would be best. Otherwise, there is the half cross-legged position, so the eyes, for instance, you should try to focus your eyes on the tip of your nose. Have your eyes not closed, but looking at the tip of your nose. The tongue, if you're in deep meditation, for instance, it's said that you should touch the tip of your tongue to the roof of your mouth. Then your back is very important to have your back straight as possible. Your head should be bent forward slightly, pressing down a little bit on your larynx. Then, I don't know if this is all 7 of them, but this is the ideal way to sit. Of course, not everyone is able to sit in that position. If you can't, it's not comfortable, if your legs won't bend easily, it's nothing wrong with sitting in a chair. You should be comfortable. But there are some important qualities about posture that are then will affect your meditation. So your body and your mind have a close relationship. And in particular, there are subtle elements of the body. There's a system of inner nerves or channels through which the vital airs travel, and you want them to not be constricted at all. If they are able to move freely, the mind will also be more easy to control and will enable you to have a more firm kind of recollection, one mental quality that you need to observe whenever you engage in practice. So mainly the point is that how you sit will make a difference in the level of your experience, your spiritual experience, as you carry out the spiritual practice.
어디든지 되네. 좋다. 지난디 조디당 아주 시내 로아 실라 시내 동네데 되나 루나나 추든데 개침고 자기도 다나 신기야 이 로아 다 개조 냠내징인데 얘는 배 개침고 배지다 니버도 고도 진사래 다 어디든지 김에네 딱 아주 남균네 지 곰디 곰해야 시는데 대토는 배개시 존나다 약슈로와 마종아 있는 제예요 말로.
So I mentioned these because for spiritual practice, those who have a strong spiritual practice, then the aim of a Buddhist practitioner will be to engage in meditation. Particularly two kinds of meditation. Sanskrit word shamatha, kind of mental quiescence or mental calmness, which is one-pointed concentration. And then on that foundation, form of wisdom, which is called vipassana, in Tibetan Hakton, insight, which is a kind of deeper level of awareness than just conceptual understanding. So these are the forms of meditation that are the goal of spiritual practice and are essential to achieve high levels of realization. And of course, if you're a tantric practitioner, then the two main stages of highest yoga practice are the so-called generation stage and the completion stage. And so those 7 elements of posture, I think I did not mention the hands. So one of the elements was that your hands should be held in front of you, one placed on top of the other with the thumbs touching together, in front of the navel. And all of these, there are explanations and instructions about the benefits and the effects of all of these 7 elements of posture, which are, if done properly and for higher levels of practice, are very important.
어디지? 다드네 남산 다드네 초바샴 아니 그때 안디네 남산만주 다 마기rum지 때는 안 남산만주 라면에 저 되어버스는 디데는 체 토마 아니 가서 꾸노 줘야 돼 배게신 버렸어. 꾸노디야 고치 줘야 아니지 가서 오랬다. 소수의 셈을 가르치기도 듣는도 딱제에 고치 채는 와. 셈디 아니 전주그 셈나 니지 셈보다 아니지 그게 스타시 셴뱅이 삼바세로 보다 디제 꾸노 야고지 여바이나 다 말한주 꾸노 줘가요 말이. 대마인 버체 셈디베 다 차방 와 되자 시당 아니 공조 다는 신가게 안 다는 신 셈디 되와 통되다. 아니 대민기 셈디 되오면에 지단 고외 분소 다 말한주 지 그게 Sendi dubi dewa mayi bayan jik dubi hadam didil gyawa langdo dan didil dubi yundeli ya ying dewa. Rwa? Ta kowe dubi chu kante jili ya pige jik chakwe chaksim tang. Rwa? Ani jik dana shingi pe nyasun sumla ya yang kongru ya dide yorwa da. Oto didegi samba yuna ani nga nzu gulun chogo ya di kechimbo res.
So then even once you, arrange yourself in a suitable sitting position, it's still you're not ready to begin to recite the prayer and do the practices associated with the prayer. It's important just before you start to do the practice to again engage in the exercise of correcting your motivation. Correcting your motivation is really crucial at the beginning of any spiritual practice. And so correcting your motivation involves largely just reflecting and observing what kind of state of mind are you currently in. The goal is to have the intention, to have the motivation of compassion, bodhicitta, concern for others, which was described before as the proper attitude for Mahayana practice in particular. Then unless you have that attitude naturally, you need to engage in some sort of exercise in which you develop that kind of attitude. So first thing is, do you have some kind of negative attitude? You might not be in a good mood. You might be upset about something. You might be angry about something. You might be feeling attachment towards something. You might be feeling a sense of pride or any other mental affliction. And first thing you do is you need to quell that. And once you quell that, then you're ready to try to build a proper spiritual attitude, the Mahayana attitude. So you need to spend some time, as much as possible. If it doesn't occur naturally, then you have to make some kind of effort to create that attitude. It's a genuine feeling, but it's one that you have to by reflecting, by recalling what are the elements that will help you to develop that bodhicitta attitude in order to experience it, not just have it conceptually, but to feel it. And that feeling of bodhicitta is what you're striving to gain as your motivation. If you're able to gain that through this exercise, then you're ready.
Oh, then today we samba nimombe shawando song yuna ani samdandan di wa ani chika soreta kandes kugresna rwa sususena khodanti ani rwata sedi pe digi thomna pendo hayin dus oh sedi digi se di kaze ki be yungu loncho be ine yang ko chika sore seji rima doshi kewa shima penjena pendo dinjuzan pendo midus orba ot dirche 다른 신기 세대 디기 아니 지금 가서래 가서래 다간다 온 세대 디기 아니 그게 디기를 차바이나 아니 최소는 저토우미도스 그봐 다 최대 거비게 장마지 차도우미도스 다간다 신기 대전의 마세베트니 비게 가서래 세치마들이야 하다 미 그봐 다니 비때 상부지 다 그봐 두바이네야 아니 지 가서 오래 로바 고에 분소 아니 고에 분소 되니 그 삼바지마도 아니 대화 침을 쳐서 또 도와야 민도스와 제단 디데이 가서 오래다 말한 줄과 되니 비게 로바 되니 고에 동네세 데 컨디스데스는 배 하다 미 댄상고지 라네요 네가 비데기 로바 전부 samjire ma to digi ya be tendo debe digi ji rutuye yuna ta ya ko tigir ba tendo debe digi ji ani ko e punzo ni rutuye ji zawani ni yo res 제산 들리지 인도잖아다 어디 도스다 res
so this exercise of examining and correcting your motivation involves typically the lower thoughts that we have would be what we would describe as being attached to this life. When we say this life, that usually means the success or the prosperity associated with this life. What ordinary, secular people set as their life's goal. In the Dharma, that is not suitable. That's not appropriate. That's not even a form of Dharma practice. It is what normally we develop desire for, and it's a form of attachment to samsaric existence. To the extent that we are mainly concerned with those kinds of goals, we prevent ourselves from, engaging in those kinds of activities that have true spiritual value. So we need to reflect on the disadvantages, the reasons why it's inappropriate, what kind of bad results we'll have to experience if we allow ourselves to be motivated mainly by attachment to this life, which means typically some form of samsaric well-being. Even beyond that, as we said before, the first level, the lowest level of Dharma practice is to try to ensure that we do not suffer an unfavorable rebirth after this life. So we have the ability to engage in virtuous practice, and that will bring us in our next life, for example, a higher realm rebirth. While that's a goal, that's actually a form of samsaric prosperity, samsaric well-being. And so in the highest sense, that's not a worthy goal in the highest sense. So we have to recognize that even if we were to achieve a life of ease and wealth and comfort, it is only temporary. It doesn't last. And what follows after it is likely to be something less desirable, to the extent that we become absorbed in that kind of pleasure and do not devote ourselves to the Dharma. So first thing is to turn away from samsaric pleasures and samsaric well-being. And we have to continue to recognize that anything short of Mahayana attitude is not going to be providing us with a true spiritual goal. And so we have to overcome any tendency that we might have to settle for some kind of lower kind of motivation. And that's part of this process of correcting the motivation.
제단다 코베 디디스에 로와 한데직베 마란주 로와 아니직 로와다 로와다 코베 대원 용인데 한데지 사이베 이내양 디디디 아니 가서오르다 뇽뇽니베 레 상고도 조베이나 아니 로와 디니베 마란주 가서오르 겨 지로만 남수 레니모 망고 사요 로와 디 지불 때니 아니 가란주 지 가서 냐와이다 tun주숨리야 아니 지가서 깨네 그러봐 안 타도 되나 다 야무지요는 도스 디인도스네 다 가서 오래 고아세야디 아니 고아세야들 다 한다 땐도 대화시 자원이니가 도스 그러봐 동네마도 미도스 세상 디인도 고아께서 심부틀에 타와시마 좀이는 다 변도 가야네 도스 세상 고아래 타바디 아니 베와다 다른 제고 도스 하나는 다른 하나도 베 밀루 Rinpoche te to sanji ite ba de je yewe shini ani pe te ba chi be yewe shini tsin sang wa de che ro ani ji so so mu ne ine ji pe chue du dan be chimbu ji shin ge yo de da ni shi chue du dan shen ba zeng ma se be chue la ma ran zu te ba je yu che 대화 여바서는 맞으면 최주야기 튕겐디야 말하는 소리와 창대봐. 실은 배로다 최주단시 대화 연이 튕겐면은 아니야. 그 튕겐 배 소다 거래 된다. 용대범마도 지기 최치는 두수요 말와. 디데 유선에다 디데 멤버 최주배 튕겐 하는 그 가서 딱 되세 내가데 고향 도로를 아니 지금 그게 사야겠다. 지금 그게 되게 상마 튕겐식 좀 돼요. 봐. 지난 디데 인도다 개개 탐지다. 제 튕겐 말루가 참배 갑들이야. 아니 단예 다른 고급 상보디 고급 상보 인도 소소 문제도 지금 토네. 와. 다 다른 만주면 거두두 다른 거 튕겐 차상 사샤. 고아생에 되는다. 디디스에든 남에도 감송 고아 강도 깨장 아니 지금 그게 동네 못함매버지 왔다 동네 숨을 쏘고요. 아니 지금 동네 교회 동네 캐버도 지금 동네를 쏘고다 매 동네 배지 드라마를 세우마도 가다 집에 동네랑 신입부터 인도 짜네 아니 다른 배니 고거 상고도 먼저 버지 토네 아니 배다 고알에 타토가 지나와 아니 배니 손에 타토가 치러와 어다 배니 지금 있으러와 어다 드레스 상고 담고 있버스.
So, in connection with this exercise, it's important to consider that when we think of ordinary kinds of happiness, ordinary kind of success and prosperity, samsaric happiness, success, whether it's in this life or even in the next life, we have, in order to achieve that, the cause for that is some virtue, some kind of virtuous activity that we were able to accomplish is the main cause that will bring about those results. But when we achieve those goals, first of all, those goals are temporary. They do not last. And if we don't continue to engage in virtuous activities, if we rely on whatever comfort and ease we have achieved, then we're not going to accumulate any new virtue, and the result, that well-being that we might have achieved, the causes that brought it about will become exhausted, and then what will come after that will likely be something that is created by former unfavorable karma, which means that we will face something undesirable beyond that. So we need to regard all of samsara, even in its favorable forms, the relatively favorable forms, as not reliable, not trustworthy, not something to set as our real goal, because they don't represent a permanent form of happiness or peace. So that's one part, is to recognize all the disadvantages of samsara, regardless of where in samsara one might be born, higher realms or lower realms. They all have disadvantages to them. And there are various teachings about the forms of suffering. So, for example, the three kinds of suffering are the suffering of suffering, which those unpleasant kinds of painful mental, physical experience, suffering of change, which is those temporary pleasurable experiences that don't last, and then the suffering of conditioned existence, which is a subtle form of suffering that pervades all of samsaric existence and is by its very nature then unsatisfactory. And when we reflect on those, then we can develop a sense of aversion for samsara and try to seek something that represents freedom from that state. Even that is not the highest goal, but that's an important part of our, method of reflecting on what goals we should be seeking. So another element that's equally important is to recognize that the unique nature of our current life. We were born as human beings. We're here today because we have faith in the Dharma, We had the good fortune to meet with the Dharma, the complete form of the Dharma, high Dharma that is, offers us the opportunity to achieve supreme goal. We have the opportunity, there are spiritual teachers in the world who can, advance our understanding and our ability to practice, and presumably we have some willingness to engage in Dharma practice ourselves. So all of these are favorable conditions. And then we should also reflect that, we are more than likely have sufficient, resources to, provide us with shelter, provide us with clothing, provide us with, means of subsistence, food, to daily food, and all of these things make it possible for us to engage in the Dharma. So when we think about that, then that should, help us to recognize the importance of this unique occasion that this life offers, and that should motivate us to want to make the most of it. So these are all elements that we can rely on as we are preparing to engage in the practice.
다중 말하면서 때 지가서 오래 냐와이다 두두다고 질이야 깨유는 아니 로와 니순순다고 깨유는 아니 최 징게 말해라 기시 최 제배 원도 땅와 이내양 아니 루덴 거라베 미콤베네 인상 아니 지가서 오래 예외신이 세단된 바도 로와 대바치베 예외신이 세단된 제기 말해 산제기 된 바도 제와세데 요 말해 로와 아니 소소용원에 이내 지게 지 가서 오래다 남도근에 시기 말이 세상 디데 인도산에다 최주다 묘마로 세상 디데 인도다 다른 미루된 톱에 둔딜이야 안 최시베 네버도 두고 그래 상바지다 아니 가서 오래더니 그게 마란주베 최주에 미대 개발진 디지 톱도 세상 디데 인도 디값수 안에 베 마란주더니 그게 쳔디다와 고액 분조에 맞아왔지와 최남다야 옷이 두고 인상이지. 되네 센디다 코에 근조로 창에디 말한 주인의 배 다린지고 된다 상당히 소리도 와. 다배 최칭했으니데 배 론다와 뭐 차시딘 통에 미 남주에 대한 중국적으로 와. 다미 다린지고 된다 상당 선인의 가르치는 시 육신의 미 남주에 매르지로 와. 난 디나시 세지고 된다 중에디 다린지고 된다 중에 수치래. 다 가서 오래 니베 포장 누구 론다와 로 갸니게 제기 내당 상단 단다고 지시 중에디 아니 슈 중에 미스네 미도 다 개와스를 땡기 두마 중에 미쳐버 와. 어쨌든 내 이베 수수 상단나 포장을 보지다. 얘는 그 체포 장수 차장 뽑아지 토네. 맞다. 내가 계고 있는데 다 거의 근소 생활이 나랑주 당신한테 로징이 뭐데 수수 워처치에디 워처치와 지대게 통한다 또데 만주 알리 라멘저 마치 공라다 만주 겸주 제고와 겸주 제고는 인중 삼게 고와 인중 게다 보시고.
So part of the way of reflecting about our current life is to recognize that we are free from those forms of birth that do not have the opportunity to engage in Dharma, even if the desire to do so were to be present. So for using as example the three lower realms, whether it be the hells or the tortured spirits or animal realms, those life forms, those forms of existence don't have the ability, they don't have the mind, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the opportunity to hear the Dharma, much less understand it and practice it. So to think that we are free of that is important, that we have, by being free of those inopportune states, then we are able to engage in the Dharma. We have the opportunity to meet with the Dharma. The Dharma exists. The Buddhas have appeared. The teachers are here. Teachings are available, and we have some faith in the Dharma. So all of this are necessary qualities in order for us to achieve spiritual value from this life. So all of that's important as a way of motivating ourselves, gaining the incentive to engage in Dharma practice. There were some more ones I'm trying to, let's see. I'm thinking
어디체? That isn't it. That didn't around to choose any arrange go.
So what you said, I'm sorry, I did a little lapse there for a second. As an ordinary human being, it's important not to be short-sighted. The person who only thinks about the short term, who only thinks about this life, that's a person who is at a great disadvantage. That's the kind of person who will develop attachment for ordinary, samsaric well-being. And that when you have that kind of thought, then that becomes an obstacle that prevents you from engaging in the Dharma. But a person who is far-sighted means a person who is able to think beyond this life, to understand that this life came from past lives. This life will be followed by future lives. And that what we do in this life will affect our future lives. When we start thinking in that, with that perspective, then we will see the importance of the Dharma and what it offers us, what opportunity it offers us, what is unique about the Dharma in terms of what will it allow us to achieve in the long term. And when we start thinking that way, we will develop a sense of not being concerned about this life and not being concerned about ordinary samsaric pleasures. For example, when you are going to do any spiritual practice, typically begins with the act of taking refuge. And when you take refuge, one element of the act of taking refuge is the sense of concern about the unsatisfactoriness of samsara and unsatisfactoriness of, in particular, the suffering of the lower realms, and developing that kind of attitude which is called renunciation, meaning that you want to free yourself from that kind of samsaric bondage. So in order to develop that attitude, you need to reflect, you need to think about your own life and how your lifetime is not limited to this life, and all the points that have been addressed. So, the short-sighted person is a person whose perspective, whose focus is kind of the here and now. They're only concerned about what they can achieve in today or in the very short term. But a person of from the Dharma point of view, we would say a person who's more intelligent or a more reflective person is a person who realizes that the future is long term, and if we want to affect the future in a way that is most favorable for us, then we have to take a longer term view.
근데 이제는 아주 최주에도 개정부지. 다 최기 나네 초도 교바데 대화침부 취. 그와 재산들이 이제 다른 아주 대화침부 취지 제고요래. 대화침부 취 제발라 취 제발이야 아니 전주 있습니다. 인지 신부면은 대화침부 취. 다 용토도 매지. 디 이제는 아니지 가서 오래. 예 아니 배 심제 탐제 다 소소 심제 탐제는 아주 멋있게 말와. 아주 멋있게 말와. 어디 시기 또다 심제 탐제도 도와를 주 심제 탐제스고 도와를 주 심제 탐제 어디 시기요 말을 때에 이내 나란 줄로 파마치만 용한 지양요 말을 제가 그때 파마치에 내가 나란 줄에 진진 rwata pamashada chagi yuwa yindu dida tamje rwa ane be kwa dunga kyazu chimbo nyongda nyongshimba dunga sangi mekeba nani yuwa yindu zangane ane chikpege dida dunga le chana chimaro ane be dida dunga dan chawa gyurchik ane chikpege dida dunga dan chawa ane be nye chigi yin samba oda didi samba res dana shingi dida be dewadan dewe gyudan denpa dena chimaro dewadan denpa gyurchik ane dewadan denpa be karsa ura dene pege dagi chigi yin samba oda didi samba.
So the most important thing that we can do with our lives is to pursue the Dharma. That is the most valuable activity that we can devote ourselves to. And within all the forms of Dharma practice, the highest form of practice, the highest form of Dharma is Mahayana Dharma. The Dharma in which the goal is to recognize your responsibility for the welfare of others, in addition to yourself. So in order to develop that attitude, which is beyond mere renunciation of samsara, but also to recognize that just as you are immersed in the ocean of samsaric suffering, so too are all sentient beings. And not only, and that's evident, but the important thing is to understand our relationship to all sentient beings. So if we think about it, the number of sentient beings is unlimited. The number of sentient beings that we in this life have any connection with or any interaction with is minuscule, and the number of sentient beings that there are is, beyond comprehension. And so we might think that we don't know, we have no connection with the vast majority of all sentient beings, not only humans, but all forms of life. But if we reflect on it, and if we consider the fact that our past lives are infinite, then we can recognize that it's certain, it's definite, that of all the sentient beings that we have no connection with in this life, or we have no contact with in this life, we definitely had contact with them in previous lives. And in particular, the closest kind of contact that we've had, that we can identify with, is one of having a relationship of mother and parents, and close relatives, and teachers, and the like. And so in those lives, so that's saying we may not have that relationship in this life, but we definitely have in other lives. So while we cannot remember that, with our reasoning, we can understand that that's definitely the case. And then when we reflect on that, we understand that we have a kind of debt to them, in that in those cases where they were, we had those close relationships and they did benefit in such a great way that we owe it to them to try to repay that past kindness. And so the way in which to do that is to reflect that, you recognize that most sentient beings are not aware of the benefit of the Dharma. And so they are unable to find their own true well-being by themselves. And so out of concern for them in their limited capacity, then we should think how in the loving kindness is described as an attitude in which you feel a strong sense of urgency to provide beings with the happiness that they lack. And likewise, they are undergoing countless and continuous intense forms of suffering which they are not able to free themselves from. So compassion is to focus on that and to feel strongly that it's essential that they should become free of that, and that it's not sufficient that you wish for their well-being, their true spiritual well-being, but also that it's your responsibility, it's your duty to try to bring it about yourself and to commit yourself to that goal. And then as you do that, you recognize that the only way to do that the most effective way is by seeking enlightenment, Buddhahood itself, supreme enlightenment. And when you're able to develop that motivation, then you have reached the point of Mahayana attitude.
다 근데 이제 전에 다 심지어도 이제 대화던 덴바탕 안에 동해던 체외 쿠르디 안에 배 소수 지구 있게 구구요. 배는 가란주 소수 파마다고지 나니 나보다 다 직비게 가래이네 강에 체외 값이 있나? 디 강에서 쿠르디 가란주 퍼고도 왔어. 디는 신심제 탐제랑 파마 차대 있으면 심제 탐제 동해서 대화 주에 쿠르디 가란주 다른 신기 밥이고요. 그래서 가인스는 심제 탐제랑 파마도 지고지게 하셔야 파마는 아주 셰브주슈구요래 아니 지가서다 비게 파메강에 셋업된 안세구요나시 심제 탐제디 랑 진진 파마 인도 대다 동에 강에 셋업랑 치구요 디쿠디랑 파구요 제와 단 저와 아니 심제 탐제 대화도 때마다 동에 대체나 매 대화도 때마다 동에 대체와 자고 상받지 탐 아니 지 대답을 누버디랑 민도 로와 대답을 누버디 솔로도스나 아니 배 양도 저도 산지 고반도 무시도 요배기도 전에 아니 that's yours 가인스나 산지 좀 된디니 대배고 견제 뉴스고 다니 되니 비게로와 우이 다 조디베 로와 아니 지가서 그래 로와다 배 양도 저도 산지 고반도 무시 야지 도 상하지 나 되지 상당 그랬어.
So one way to recognize how to develop this kind of attitude is to think about your current relationship in your own family. So if your parent, either of your parents, as they get older, are suffering, are faced with difficulties, because of our closeness to them, it's very easy to develop this feeling of wanting to do something to relieve whatever difficulty they may be facing. It's almost innate, it's natural. So in the same way, if we reflect on the fact that all sentient beings are such that we have had that same parental relationship in some lifetime, and not only in one lifetime, and not only as a human being, but countless times, then we can recognize that it's appropriate for us to develop the same kind of concern. So the separation from time through time or lifetimes does not erase that relationship that you did have, and so we need not to forget it or to ignore it or to abandon it, and in that way we begin to develop the sense of responsibility. That it's meant to say kur sounds like a burden, but it's not meant to be a burden. It's meant to be something that we feel is our obligation towards all sentient beings. And once we gain that in a genuine way, in a heartfelt way, then we need to reflect on our current status. Do we currently have the ability to benefit beings, not in a short-term way, not in a limited way, but in the highest possible way, which is by using the Dharma to free them from their suffering, permanently. And we can recognize that likely in our current status we don't have the ability to do much in a long-term way for many people, much less all sentient beings. And if we reflect on that, we can reach the point where we understand that the truly, perfectly enlightened Buddhas are the unique and only beings who have that capacity, and that's something that exists, and that's something that is possible for us to achieve as well, and then we feel a sense of necessity to seek that goal in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Kenzin Nusum Dani Barwa, and the Usun to the Yunde, Tuzonazia was somewhere vacation. Suzanne being the Guli, I bet sense of Sujus and Bejes on the Judas over soon you did some bay and Yala Chujuta Demba. And then to Kenzin Nusumi, and the Dani, there's something Mikawa. Or that the day go on, she around to talk to Ina, and then Caso the Simjet Hamji, get Chimbuchi, Chitugure, what? Suzanne the day you do that, the Yesimjet Hamjet, Sandy you go on, Tobach Chagin, the age to the Lamanager, the Yosunami.
So if we take Buddha Shakyamuni, we refer to him as the Lord of Munis. And it's an epithet for Buddha Shakyamuni, the historical Buddha. And so we recognize that a being such as he has three essential qualities. He has not only full knowledge, Chemba, he also has ultimate compassion, Tsewa, and then he has also the ability, the capacity to benefit others, Nuba. So those three qualities are one way of thinking about a fully enlightened Buddha. Another way to reflect on the Buddha is all the physical qualities, all the verbal qualities, and all the mental qualities that represent the state of perfection, spiritual perfection. So we reflect on the Buddha's, major marks, and minor marks, and unique elements of the physical body which Buddhas can manifest. Then their speech is said to have 60 or 64 unmatched verbal qualities by which they impart the Dharma, benefit others in the highest way. And then, of course, their knowledge has many different ways of describing all the kinds of unmatched forms of realization that are unique to the Buddhas. And when we reflect on those, then we can understand why Buddhahood should be the goal that we set for ourselves, because it allows us, it would provide us with the ability to benefit beings in the highest way possible. And then when we reflect on these sincerely and with some understanding, and the attitudes associated with the motivation of bodhicitta, of wanting to seek enlightenment for others, for the benefit of others, then it will begin to awaken in us. And so that's the kind of attitude that we should have when we are getting ready to carry out any Dhamma practice, and in particular here, this Guru Yoga practice.
다들 인도산에 어떤 대체 다들 지금 타면 아니 배 간대 한김니다 냠내 지금 요바 인도산에 알리 캠주산기 뭐래야와 아니 생계 친구 계기 때기 치친구 직공 것이에체 와 생계 친구 계기야 루스 짠데 치친구 체 이 때문이야 아니 라마 안 두배오고 이게도 가자 또 두배오고 아니 예도 라마 아니 이담 얼와 아니 장세 보우 한로 주종 수마다 제가 탐제 아니 배 초신도 주요상 제와 아니 어디 됐지 다 근데 가서 그랬더니 대다 상매 눈과 눈이나 투규리야 아니 가서 그래 최군주와 아니 다 가서 그랬더니야 가서 그랬더니 비게 최군주 외기는 신진기 그러봐 아니 배 부디 부배제 부디 여러 부디 넘버 이거 봐 삼로치 땅데 봐 아니 배 개뷰야 붙였다 그러봐
So as we begin to carry out the Guru Yoga practice, the first thing is the first element of practice is to carry out the act of going for refuge, going for refuge to the three Ratnas, followed by the act of generating in a formal way bodhicitta that we've been describing. So for the first part, for taking refuge, we need to visualize the object, so-called object of refuge, in front of us, which is an assembly of all the beings that make up the three jewels and our Lama. So the refuge object in the middle of that assembly is a so-called lion throne. It's a golden throne. The reason it's called a lion throne is because at each of the four corners there are two lions. Sometimes when it describes as a total of 8 lions, which represent the intrepid nature of the Buddhas, are supporting this throne. Then seated upon the throne on cushions, lotus and moon, sun cushions, is the figure of Buddha Shakyamuni, whose essence is your root Lama. And then seated on both sides and all around him are then all the lineage lamas from the different lineages of the Lamrim and Tantric lineages, as well as then all the Buddhas of Sutrayana, Tantrayana Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and then all the Patika Buddhas and Shravaka, Arhats, and then Dharma protectors and Daka Dakinis, all of them accompany the main figure. Visualize them as clearly as we can, and so they represent, in particular, the Lamas and the Buddha Ratna and the Sangha Ratna, and then in their minds, in their awareness, their knowledge that they have achieved represents the Dharma Ratna, the true form of Dharma Ratna. And representing that Dharma Ratna, then you visualize in front of each of these figures is a small table, and then on it a scripture volume which represents the teachings and knowledge which each of those figures have achieved. And so altogether, taken all together, they represent the object in whom and in which we take refuge.
다 대다 뒤뒤에야 소소 탐에는 나봐 요체와 뒤뒤에야 라니 아니 탐에는 나봐 체 소소 뒤당 아니 뒤 타고려야 아니 소소 파마 그렇다 지 가서래 소소 아니 자니 그와 자다니 되게 창마 또 요체 다는 시 자니 가에 많이 버기야 파르메신제들의 여러와 근소의 상보다 자니 파르마 수가 또 요스 공화제로와 자니 가에 많이 버다 탐제와 어다 감수 신제 탐제 아니 베지 가서래 로라나 소소 동행 용심을 이봐 아니 넘버 미 넘버지 저 주수수 동행 연다 용심을 넘버 임발라 아니 가서 우리 미 넘버지 요치 봐 아니 대다 탐지 깨위리야 아니 가촌이야 봐 아니 대 유sam에서 또 됐다 그랬어.
So when you are an additional part of the visualization, in addition to the refuge object, is then those beings who are going to carry out the act of going to the three Ratnas and the Lamas to take refuge in them. So you yourself, obviously, and you should consider yourself at this particular point as an ordinary human being, who is, a samsaric being, someone who is not liberated and is in need of the three Ratnas' protection and spiritual refuge. Not only yourself, then also your parents, on your disliked parents on either side of you, and then in front of you, you can visualize also individuals, human and non-human individuals who are antagonistic towards you, enemies, those who might do you harm. And then also those who are, you consider your friends, those who you have a friendly relationship with. So those are immediate people that you know in this life. But not only those, in addition to that, surrounding you all around, you visualize that all sentient beings are gathered there. And of course, when we think of all sentient beings, that means the 6 classes of sentient beings, including the lower realms. So, but we don't visualize them as hell beings or as animals. All the sentient beings, even worldly gods, we visualize them all in the form of ordinary human beings as well. Their nature is whatever form of samsaric existence they possess, but their outer form is that of an ordinary human being like ourselves. And we're all gathered there, and we're all, in need of the refuge and protection of the 3 dragons. We're all suffering one way or another from difficulties of samsara and our unenlightened state.
다 되네 이제 되지기 전에 아니 알아서 배 잠줄 균이디하고 다 세다 그랬어. 균이 세다가 하려랬으나 다 말아서 되게 삼스와 되는 그게 지가서 오래다. 와 되는 그게 심지어 탐제 아니 배 코에네서 되는 그게 겨워서 통마음에 반에 참네. 와 되는 배 동네 상품 미게 봐. 아니 다 양도 용심이 줘봐다. 아니 배 지가서 오래 바로 다도야 아니 배 동네 양거 봐. 와 다 빈제 도야 아니 냠무고비 김제 자원 미도스. 세상다 배 동네에 참여해 지키는 미도스. 세상들에 있는 땅 알아서 배 물류도 산이 된 담배 취단지 그럼 밀어야 아니 고아반에 아니 배 산지기 로바트니 배 고방 토버지 제마도나 아니 배 양결 고에는 캠니 아니 배 그거비 배 년송도 깨워 거비 배 하다 밀 깨워 다는 시기들이 되게 되게 소보다 배 고에도 산지 문제 뭐 양고듯이 도 제가 배 강타선 배 삼반배 직자지 지신적인 직관 유교리 규칙です.
So then as the motivation for taking refuge, there are 2 principal causes, really reasons why we need to take refuge. Then the first reason, or the first cause, is requires that we consider the fact that not only in this life, but since beginningless time, in all our past lives, there has never been a time when we weren't experiencing samsaric suffering. In the worst case, when we were reborn in the hells or in one of the lower realms. But even being reborn in the higher realms, that's not it's actually another form of samsaric existence, which is by its nature undesirable and unsatisfactory. So that brings us to where we are in the present. We've never not been in samsara, and in our present life, in our present status, we don't have the ability on our own to put a stop to that suffering. Not only that, unless we recognize our suffering and want to try to do something about it, our future, what awaits us in future lives is nothing but more of the same. And if we don't take advantage of this current opportunity, then we will simply fall back into endless future suffering. And so that should bring us a sense of apprehension, actually fear, about our current state and our plight and our inability to do anything about it ourselves. We don't have the capacity or the ability or the knowledge to put an end to it. So that's the first thing that should motivate us to want to take refuge.
그다음에 좀 주주한 것도 쳐와. 되네. 라니 안에 배 동행이 나와라. 가서 오래. 지다 유신도 너와 아니 배 너와 때문에 타고는 유배 심지어 탐제장 아니 배보다 마다 집어도 너와 아니 고에내야 참니 너와 동네 삼기 미겨본 양도가 제가 대답에 지가서 너와다 닝지 깨고 너와 다음에 신이 되는데 말한서 탐제에 되게 동네 나와 집어도 때 동네 나와나 너와 되게 가서 오다베 시나 직나치 너와 되는데 다티 된도스 대den 펜토도스 동네들에 깨be täm내직 다쳐도스 대단 동네들에 깨be täm내데 소레서는 아니 뒤는 단계 세다베다 깨비다 하고지 제도스 제가 대달이야 수수님 타관에 배 리뷰도 만수네 채널과 겹주와 아니 배런 시 심지어든 저 고지당 제다게 동네에 깨be 누가도 그리고 제가 322지 아니 이지지 중앙이나 아니 겹주기니부터 상을 했어.
So that was the first cause or motivating reason for taking the refuge. The second primary cause rests in the refuge object, and that involves understanding the nature of the lamas and what the three ratnas, in each of their own individual way, how they represent the means, the infallible means by which we can, if we resort to them, gain the ability to free ourselves from suffering. So you need to understand the nature of the Dharma, the nature of the Buddha, the nature of the Sangha, the nature of the Lamas, and how they benefit you. And then recognizing that, you develop a form of faith, form of conviction, that without question, definitely the refuge object is the means, the infallible sole true means by which we can free ourselves from our difficulties, samsaric difficulties. But in the case of Mahayana teaching, those two causes are not complete. We have to add a third motivating cause, which is, in addition to concern for our own plight, we have to recognize that all the sentient beings that are surrounding us are in the same condition that we ourselves are. And again, reflect on our obligation to them, our responsibility for them, our desire to want to free them and help them in addition to ourselves. So that third cause is a form of compassion rather than fear. And so those three elements together are the main causes that we should generate as the reasons for going forward with the act of, the essence of refuge is to entrust yourself, to believe that the Buddhas have the ability to save you and that they will save you if you, request their assistance. And so then with that attitude, you can go forward with the main act itself.
That's Din Duen Sosun Dembata, Cho Sung, Sosu Tawol Yubetangi, Ja, Nye, Parma, Sosu Pamatic, Sama Yuba, Ridu Sosu, Dominion Shima, Simje Tamje, Manju Simje Tamje, Yorba, Manju Simje, the Tamje Yang, Ani Sosun Dembata, Choji, Konzoe, Dungu Yube, Be Jamru, Wurchi, Yad, Dueneba, Ani Be Jamel Kujo Sumia, Be Jamru, Ani Kasuta, Chigi Yusam Samba. Oda Genepe 데데스 되는 아마가 되었지 상계를 되었지 쇼를 되었지 진료를 되었지 다 중나베 차라 야동 가제 되네 다 용슈를 차숨
So in Mahayana form of the act of going for refuge, you're when you say you're entrusting yourself to them, right? You're placing your trust in them, that the three Ratnas and including the Lamas will not, fail to benefit you, fail to, provide you with the means to achieve your own spiritual goals. But for the Mahayana form of taking refuge, mainly you're taking refuge in the Buddha Ratna because that's a goal that you're seeking yourself. So when you go for refuge, you're going for refuge to them because you wish to achieve Buddhahood itself, not simply to free yourself from samsara suffering. And not only that, then you should also reflect that as you recite, so the words, the various phrases or various statements that incorporate the act of taking refuge. The simple way is, I go for refuge to the Lamas, I go for refuge to the Buddhas, I go for refuge to the Dharma, I go for refuge to the Sangha. Those four. So we say there's three jewels, but the Lamas are included as a form of supremely enlightened beings. So they are part of the Buddha Ratna, if you like. So as you recite those four words, or those four forms, those four aspects of the act of taking refuge in the three Ratnas and the Lamas, then you should also reflect that all the sentient beings around you, your parents, your friends, your enemies, all the six realms of beings, they are also reciting at the same time the words along with you. You are leading them in the recitation, but in your mind you can hear everyone is also saying the same words together. It's like, how you would describe all sentient beings at the same time, verbally, voicing this act of taking refuge. And so as you do so, then the main essence of the act is the mental act of entrusting yourselves in all the three Ratnas and the Lamas as believing that they can save you in the sense of they can make it possible for you to achieve the goal of Buddhahood that you yourself seek.
I can't do them because I think I am to visit the Johnson and visit the Johnson sometimes. That visit the Johnson addressing Tangi to do not to be on Chuchu Jawa Senator, Sanjay Sansapo, Control Chuju Sumupe, Dusma, Aranzulima, and to Zawachim on a season, show you Gonchi, some time. Tedaki, Hule, we say Nanga, Macho, we say Nanga Treni, and we say Nangati, Yungawachi. Shukchawachima, Pop, Randang, Rangi Tawala, you be any bed, Manju Joas, Tamjig, and listen ma shuk. Tening Randang, Drom, Nangatata, and Bessenger, Tamji, Gawa Settlement Sabe, and a net doing Deities, Tamji, Chanshita. What? Any be Kawatuya, any be Maranzu, then Kunjo Sumla, Tembe, that Deities, that Jig be Kunjo Sumla, Tamaranzu, be. 가시고라 다 말한지 대바디 템부치킨 요마로 대바디 템부치 요구 요마리 아니 직 담지데 수신 송도 요마리 대바다 담지 송세 조디다 직 레균제 담지 송에 들어와 군조 송에 레균제 실내샤부터 내가 치스가는 거를 만주디 지기 요마로 미기 주고 수준의 소베다 베 니모 조송 끊을라 아니 베지 다시나 되는 나이디 건 루디 건 이디 건에 벤네버 차침부마고 쉬우치해되고 여러 디kimbe 레가나 망고치사 디kimbe 지구동에 차진 양네 되는 베니에서 숨어서 겨와만 겨워서 통면에 되는 아주다 거기서 호와지다 제다도 내도냐 손도냐 양도 양심 같은 차대 여러 진짜 디데 참만 요에 가서 담지에 오마서 그랬어 담지에 오마서에 가서 이지 야고면서 좋아 이지는 다디 미 나도 미 이치서 지기 시에는 미디 라브나지 인기도 당 알아서 군조는 이지디 연구요 아니 군조리 이지 계속 걔네 걔는 군조 송 지거와 군조 가르 송을 레귤 되시 지수치 근데 지금 말로 세다 디데 두지 벽장 지도다 내 님버티다 탐지 파고도 군조수는 땜비기다 대화 아니 탐지 아니 지그게 따가는 신경을 좀 놓다 이거로 내기를 놓다더니 군조수 다 되게다 탐지에 때 장시 타네 근데 담배 모디 아니 배 디지 넘버 임발라 가서 모디 대 임발라 넘버 때 아니 배 두고도 수고래 넘버 아니 바보 보가 탐지네 아니 마치 퇴수 퇴네 마 다수 상마치다 타를 아니 배 류시의 공에 야타봤다고 그러봐 장마 야고지 차송 상마치로 어떻게 됐어?
So as we recite the words for the act of refuge, I go for refuge to the lamas and so on. At the same time, there's a visualization that we should carry out. And that visualization is called Dutsi Bebjang. Dutsi means nectar, wisdom nectar. Beva means that it flows down. Gyema means it purifies us and clears away our obstacles. So the first part of that visualization is that we visualize from each of those figures in the refuge object, all of them, from their bodies, light rays and nectar combined flow down in having 5 colors. And in this case, predominant color is white. White is purifying you. And so those light rays and nectar, as they flow down from all those beings, they not only flow into you through the top of your head, but also all the sentient beings that are surrounding you and are residing along with you, they are receiving the same blessing. And so the first part, where white is predominant, when the nectar and light rays enter your body, they will drive out. They will push from your body. They will clear away from your body, in your mind, mainly in your mind, all of your negativities, right? All your mental obstacle seeds, all of the causes of your sickness, all of your susceptibility to influence from harmful spirits, and all of these negative qualities can be cleared away. In the visualization, that's what you are then reflecting. As the nectar flows down, it dries out through the pores of your body. So all of these negative qualities have their actual nature of the seeds of bad karma. Those seeds and those potentials, they have no visible quality. But as in the visualization, you imagine that they take the form of then dark-colored liquid, smoky-colored liquid, or coal-colored liquid, and it emerges. It flows out of your body through your pores, and it's predominantly from the lower part of your body. And as a result, then this nectar leaves your body completely pure, like a pure glass crystal. Your physical form, your ordinary physical body is purified and removed. And you imagine yourself as only having this then like crystal glass, but actually light, a form of subtle light. That becomes your physical form.
어디 되지? 근데 배랑 유시에 공에 야타보다고 교수 공하시다. 아니 배 단이 어디 군조수니 뇌대 임발라 넘버 아니 배 두지 넘버 아니 배 가도 되니 비게 나가 아니 왜세 까부 아다 맞춰발라 되니 윤파발라 되니 란당 랑게 타고르기 아니 배 먼저 저 심지 탐지기 아니 배 리스미야 마다 대바 탐지 요음에 같이 여러와 될 때니 아니 가서 두지 마 가서다 마 슈발라 때니 아니 군조수기 진라 멀리봐 아니 배 뉴스 쇼송 공하시다 당신 심지 탐지기 아니 군조 배 심지 탐지에 된비 군조수기 겨워도 최송 삼바치 어디들 보고 싶어 그랬어
So several
no several.
So and part of the visualization of being purified, in addition to your own all of the totality of all your negative qualities, then you can also reflect on the kinds of bad deeds, the kinds of negativities that you created for yourself in relation to each of those four elements of the refuge object. Ways in which you were at odds with your lama. For instance, there's the word damsik. Damsik means samaya. It's a kind of like agreement. So agreement means to follow the instruction which they give you. If you don't follow it, then you've broken that agreement. And so in that way, you have violated your trust with the lamas, with the Buddhas, with the Dharma, and the Sangha as well. There are different ways to reflect on it, but in a general way, you can think about each one of them specifically. And those kinds of obstacles in particular also are eliminated in the first part. Then once your body becomes pure, then again, the second part of this Tutsi Bebjang, visualizing nectar flowing down, the second part is that you become filled now with positive qualities, all the blessings, body, speech, and mind blessing, all the knowledge of the Dharma, and so on. Then flows down, again, nectar and light rays, five-colored light rays, but in this case, predominantly golden-colored light, or yellowish light. That symbolizes the increasing of positive qualities. And so they fill you in the same way they fill all sentient beings around you, and you receive those blessings, and you should then reflect that you have in fact gained the blessings of the three ratas.
Then jamru singing the Aguchuna, and the Tomba Tamjiki tend to Cuba. Number Sanji, the Tomba number Sanji Suba, Tomba Tanjiki tend to Cuba. Aniji Pigay, Dundan Gig never Mitsuba. Aniji Dundan Gig, Dungig never get to Maris, Jambu Yabuina, Jambu Yabuina, Tomba Tamji, Soda Chances, Sana Tomba Tamjiki tend to Jamburis. Aniji Sonum Pewa. 아니 데이트 장와 또 참제 다 camro를 되는 연구 요인데 말하면서 cam로 집에 개정 시험이셨어.
So as part of the instruction for the practice of going for refuge, there are benefits that we should reflect on as a way of strengthening our our faith and our willingness to carry out the practice in the most proper way. So the first benefit of taking refuge is that it qualifies you as a follower of the Buddha. It means that it's the doorway to enter into the Buddha's teaching. The act of taking refuge is kind of what makes you become a Buddhist, so to speak. One of the second qualities is then taking refuge is the basis or the foundation that allows you to take any of the different forms of Buddhist vows. So that's very important. Then another benefit is that taking refuge in the three ratnas has the power to protect you from harmful spirits and those beings who might want to do you harm. Then the Buddha's blessing will protect you from that and prevent them from being able to harm you. Then it also will help your merit. Your merit will increase. And it helps also to purify, to remove, as that visualization represented, removing your bad deeds and mental obscurations.
아니, 최 대화침부 최, 그봐? 최 대화침부 최수 좋아래, 겸로 거래. 상하 최수 좋아래, 겸로면은 상하 주샤토해.
So it's not only true for then other forms of Buddhism, but especially Mahayana Buddhism, and then in particular in the Tantrayana form of Mahayana Buddhism, you cannot practice any of them unless you take refuge in the three Ratnas and the Lamas.
我大致想想。
sa shi be ge ju shi me do zhang zhe ra li xi nin de ge sang ye xin do mi de bu wa yi zhou gu nam da xin la zhe ba shuo yi da ma gu ru men de la ga ni ya da ya me zhang be bao chi da ken ba da gu do sang bo de ya Te da kunye je so da lo jin kya wa te da tam che ran to